Hey everyone, this is a really special video today. The X-Men the Animated Series figures have finally released in my country, as you can see from this footage here. I think they probably released maybe a good month or so ago worldwide, but finally here around in NZ they released around the middle of October. This was all filmed about a week ago now. Since then this retailer has actually run out of stock and their listings have been completely pulled from their website. Basically at this point it seems like the cheapest and ideal NZ retailers, they're not actually going to be restocking this anytime soon. My store had exactly one of each of these figures, selling them all at 40 NZD each, rather than the usual outrageous Hasbro price of 50 NZD each. But get this, and this is why I was so excited, the day that they began selling these figures, they also had a store-wide sale that was a buy one get one half price on action figures. So instead of paying the usual 80 NZD for two of these, I actually paid 60, which ultimately became 30 NZD each per figure on day one release. That is a $20 saving per figure, so yes, I bought them all in one go. Again, for the NZ viewers, it looks like EB Games currently has them each for 50 NZD, which I know it's really steep. I don't see how Hasbro can keep these consumers going if they're gonna stay at this price. I was initially planning to only get, say, Wolverine, Magneto, maybe Gambit, but instead of paying 300 NZD for all six, I paid 180. These figures here are packaged in this really nice retro carded design. The figures are based on the upcoming X-Men 97 animated series that's coming out on Disney+. As far as I'm aware, there's still no real release date yet. It is a sequel series to the animated series from the 90s, which means that the designs are a little bit different, but they're also pretty similar in some cases. Some of them are even the exact same. Thank God for me. These figures were purchased so that I could have a definitive version of some of my favorite X-Men team members for my collection. Some of you may or may not have seen my coverage of that excellent Marvel Legends Beast figure. I bought that earlier in the year because I heard rumors that Hasbro might be making more of these guys. I'm very happy that I decided to make that choice. So the wave consists of 6 figures in total. We have Wolverine, Magneto, Gambit, Rogue, Storm, and Bishop. I covered the reveal of these figures earlier on in the year for those of you interested, but I imagine the figures on hand is actually more interesting. Here is the full team and all of their accessories alongside them. There is so much to love here, but there's also a couple of flaws. They did make these figures in a VHS cel-shaded design some time ago now. To my knowledge though, these figures weren't actually sold here in this country, at least easily. Otherwise it would have been the retro X-Men figures that had me back into buying toys, not the retro carded Spider-Man series like it was in reality. So I guess just bear that in mind for this review. I literally have no other versions of these figures, so I won't be able to comment and compare on whether or not this is all just lazy repackaging. Because for me, this is all brand new stuff, and I'm pretty excited to get into them. So I want to start first here with Wolverine because he was my #1 figure that I wanted to get since I started recollecting toys. He is pretty much the exact thing that I was wanting from a Wolverine toy. When I think of Wolverine, I do think of this costume, along with the yellows, blues, and the shades of blacks there. I also love that design for the face. I personally always try to steer clear and away from the live action figures because animated ones just always look so much better. He's got these rubberized shoulder pads here that are attached to his arm. They're not connected onto his costume in any way. They're connected onto his arm by these little tiny pigs. A couple of the figures have this design going on for them as well. It just means that you can have a little bit more options when it comes to moving him around. You can restructure his look a little. It's nice. Something I don't really like about this figure though are these sculpted arms. Because his hairs aren't colored in, which I do admit, I think it would look a little weird. These do just look like scars and wounds to me. They don't look very pleasant to display. Pinless arms, I've learned from doing this that that's a really big draw for a lot of collectors now, so that's cool. Wolverine claws on toys always make me really paranoid. They're just such a small tiny material that's been used. Feels very fragile, so I've kept all of the boxes now so that I can make transporting them a bit safer. I am going to be moving cities again come November, so that will be really helpful there. A really expressive, exaggerated sculpt for his back hair and for his torso muscles all around, really. So like I said, I really love this Wolverine figure. I don't think I will ever need to buy another one after this guy. And articulation-wise, he comes packing. He's better than some of the other figures in this wave, that's for sure. He can move his head around as expected. His arms can move up, down, in, and out, and he also has some really nice clavicle movement as well. All of these figures had some pretty stiff joints actually, so something to watch out over. He's got that really nice double bend in his arms for his upper and lower arm in the elbow, and again, some of these figures do not feature these luxuries, so we'll go over all of that. His hand has some articulation as well, and the same can be said for the other side of his body. He's got some bends in his chest and he can rotate around the waist, but it started to make a really scary clicking noise, so I stopped. The legs feature the same movements as the arms do, and the legs can rotate around as well. He's got the really good knee joint there, so it bends in the upper leg and in the lower leg, and his foot has some good articulation as well. Standing test, awesome, he stands really well, nice and easy. Accessory-wise, he's got a lot of some really cool stuff available for us. First, he has this really cool mask neck attachment where it looks like it's been folded down into a hood. If he has that, then he obviously would also include his mask. The mask is really cool, it's a really nice big piece. Those chin hairs though are a little odd to me. For good measure, he also comes with a pair of extra hands. It's 2 fists without the claws. Every figure in this wave does have extra hands. The Wolverine figure is my ideal inclusion for this wave, and one of the best figures I think of the bunch. Now I don't know how he stands to some previous releases of Wolverine, but I do know that in my eyes he looks just as good as those other Wolverine figures that I think look exceptional, except this one only cost me 30 NZD. Really great accessories, really great looking iconic figure. So next I want to talk about Gambit, who I've heard a lot of people say is truly just a repackaged figure, and I did notice that the retro Gambit figure did begin to drop in price on the secondhand market the moment that this one was announced, so I'll believe it. Again though, this guy only cost me 30 NZD, not 65 like I was considering to spend on the other one. This Gambit is a very toned down figure compared to that retro one. The pink chest hair looks like a neon salmon pink, whereas I think the retro one almost had like a pearlescent purple. His brown jacket on this one is a lot lighter in its color as well. The biggest change I can tell is the hair for both of them are very different. Besides that, it's mostly just a color shift. His coat's really cool. It does mean that this will affect his movements, but it's always nice to see some details on legs like this, considering this will all be hidden details. So he was one of my most anticipated figures from this wave because, like I said, I really like that retro figure and I didn't have that one, so this one makes a really good substitute. Now articulation wise, Gambit features some similar movements, bends in his head as per standard, his arms can move up and down, in and out, but the joints are pretty stiff and they're quite shortened here. I can't really seem to get him to go higher than this. Pretty big difference compared to the Wolverine figure here, he only has one bend in his elbow. Still, it's a pinless joint though, but no double bends here. I guess maybe it's supposed to emphasize the stiffness of his jacket. Articulation in his hand as well, same to be said for the other side of the figure. He's also got those chest movements like Wolverine, which is really great. These athletic type of figures should have those kinds of movements. He moves forward pretty okay, but not really backwards. He can also rotate at the hip, but the jacket does get in the way there. His legs can move in and out, up and down, and he has some rotates. The leg is not a pinless joint though, so I don't know how some people would feel about that. He does feature a good double bend joints in his legs though, extra bends in his knees, and his shins can rotate around too as well here, and I try to move his foot, but it just doesn't budge. The other foot does successfully move for me after a little bit of prying. Standing test goes quite well on my end as well. Awesome. And now for his accessories, which I do know this much, they are all repeats and in slightly different shades of colors, and actually you get less of them here compared to the retro one. First we see his staff. It's in a very similar tone to the blues that are on his body torso mold, but not quite the same. It's like a pearlescent blue almost. We have this really cool Ace of Hearts piece with some really great bright power effects detailing. These are always my favorite kinds of accessories. And then if you're into the really extreme, we also have a grander design of playing cards and power effects. He can equip all of them fairly well. The ace card fits really nicely through his fingers there, and after I had filmed all of this, that card now seems to need a little bit of pressure in order to stay in. His staff is kind of an odd one, or I guess his hand is an odd one. It does fit, and it fits pretty well, but it doesn't take too much moving to just make it so it's barely fitting. Sometimes the gripping works really well, sometimes it doesn't, so it's not really ideal in my world. And then we can take the card out of his left hand and we can swap it for the one that's firing 3 cards. This looks really cool. It's a very dynamic piece. Looks like he's in Yu-Gi-Oh or something. I will say this, that I do wish the hand for the single card was maybe on the other side, or I would have at least liked to have maybe had the option to swap the 2 around, because I'd like to have him with both of his card effects. So I think Gambit is a little bit of a tougher pill for some people to swallow. Again, I think he's mostly just a reprint, so I don't really know how much you would get out of this figure if you already have the nice looking retro one, but for me he's really great. The accessories are really dynamic and he is a favorite character of mine. Unfortunately, from here on out, the accessories, they kind of start lacking a little. So I'll talk about a really good example of that. This is Magneto, who was neck and neck with Wolverine for excitement from me. I imagine he's all just reused parts again as well though, and I'm ultimately really conflicted on this guy. We'll start with his face details. His helmet features these raccoon eyeshadow bags, which sometimes would appear in the animation for the show. Sure, I just don't really know how well that carries over in person for a toy, but I love how vibrant he looks against the shelf of other figures. They've completely nailed the colors of my eyes and the style as well. He looks really shiny compared to say Wolverine, so I think visually he looks really stunning. I'm a big fan of this rubberized material that's used for his cape for action figures. It feels really hefty and it's like the ones from when I was a kid. And it is an important note here to make that it is a rubber cape. Be sure to remember that for when we come down to one of the other figures later on in the line. It's not connected to his back, rather the front of his chest armor here, and it's really glued in at the front here, so it's not fully removable, but that's not a huge concern for me. But let's talk articulation now. The helmet, it's pretty nice. It's got full movements all around. His arms have the same movements as Wolverine, and all of his joints are pinless here. Arm has the really nice good elbow bends, and the hands have bends in them as well. As always, same on the other side here. He's got the most prominent display of chest articulation so far between the three. He can also rotate around at his hips, but it does mess with his belt a little, just like Wolverine. Legs, I think, are the same movements as Wolverine's as well, up and down, in and out. Rotates for the thigh there, and really good bends in the knee. His feet can rotate and bend too, but he's also a bit stiff here like the other figures. Standing test though, he's the first failure of the bunch. It's because he comes with that really nice hefty cape. If you don't mind him creeping though, he can stand okay. And unfortunately, as far as his accessories go, he has two hands, the same ones, just a pair of fists for his accessories, which I think is really tragic. I've witnessed for myself Magneto Legends figures that have unmasked heads, Power Blast energy pieces. I'm really disappointed in this decision, honestly, to just give him two fists. So overall, I like the Magneto figure because I like that character, but I think Hasbro really needed to hand out a couple of more accessories for some of the more lead characters here. It feels like he's lacking in departments where other Magneto figures have completely shined, so I can't confidently say that I'm done with my Magneto figures. So next here is Rogue, and she is an interesting figure. She's drastically different compared to the others with their body mold. Like the previous figures, I think that the colors are just excellent on her. She's the most unique for featuring a jacket piece that also requires some really special arms to be molded for her. I don't like how some of the torso can peer through those jacket holes though, but I don't know how you could possibly avoid that. I like the contrast of the jacket to the sleeves there. The retro one does feature that jacket in brown, so it's much easier to tell what's actually going on than the greens here. I think visually, like Eric, she looks really good though, the face details especially. Rogue, for her articulation, is interesting. She is different to the others. She can move at her head a pretty good amount actually, despite that massive hairdo. It's because her hair is a softer plastic, so it just responds easier to what you want it to do. And she's got the really nice neck bend there as well, so if it does get in the way of rotates, you can just move her head forward. She can also bend in her arms. It feels like it's the same ones as maybe Gambit. It stops at that midway point, but it might just be me. Like Gambit, she only has the one bend in her elbow though, so that is disappointing, but again, I think it's something to do with the jacket, so it's supposed to emphasize maybe natural movements. Her hands do have articulation as well, same as for the other side. Here's where the Rogue differs the most so far of the figures though. She rotates in her upper chest area, not by her waist. She can also bend backwards and forwards here. There's that clicking sound again. Legs are the same as the other figures here, up and down, in and out, rotates in her thighs and pinless legs as well, with the good knee bends too. Her feet do have some good rotates, and as far as standing goes, she actually featured the most amount of difficulty so far. I don't know what parts of her make her top heavy necessarily, I'm guessing it must be the hair, but she can stand eventually. As for her accessories, she includes a couple of extra hands, but at least they are unique hands to her. She does have a power absorbing hand which is not covered in a glove, and then she has a regular hand which is just a left fist, because you may have noticed that she was holding on to something. The hand that she comes packaged with is holding a glove, which I know is just a reused piece from the other Rogue figure, so it's not new, but I love this inclusion. It's new for me and it's a very cool dynamic piece. I really like that Rogue figure. I complained about the lack of accessories for the Magneto figure, but I don't really know what else they could have given Rogue here, so I'll take what I can get. She features some stark differences to the others so far, and all four of them have some really great unique colors and molds in their figures. So we'll do Storm next, because I'll just come out and say I don't really like this figure very much, and that way we'll end on a high note with Bishop, because I do really like that figure. Storm is another character that I really liked as a kid, so I want a really good definitive Storm figure, but this is the first time that we're seeing this character design. It's so different from what we're used to, so I don't really have my ideal Storm just yet, but whatever. I really like that face design there. I've seen a couple of people say that they don't, but that's just me. She uses the same shoulder strap things that Wolverine does. Here though, they serve a much bigger purpose for her cape. That's actually how everything is connected onto this figure. And it looks like she's using some similar parts to Rogue for the body, so there won't be too much of a difference to highlight here. I'll just get into one of the two things that I really don't like about this figure, and that is her cape. It's a papery material, and I really hate that material used here. Apparently other Storm figures have used this before though, so I don't know if people like this or not. Me personally, I'm a plastics and vinyls and rubbers kind of guy for this sort of thing, so it's cool to see that Magneto will get something like this, but it's annoying that Storm won't. It gets a little tangled up when you're playing around with it, so it's something that you'd have to be careful about. It requires a lot of fixing, and I feel like it's something that could tear very easily if I'm not careful. Like I said, her articulation is quite similar to Rogue, although it's here that I can show you this mullet hairstyle thing of hers, and it's starting to break away from my figure. Nice. Head rotates, good stuff. Her arms feature the same movements as the other figures, and smaller joints here, which are pretty scary to be messing around with after such bulky dudes. She does not feature any double bends though in her arm, which is really surprising. There goes my whole it's the natural movements kind of theory. Like Rogue, she can rotate in her upper chest, but that cape being that material does actually mean that she can move freely all over, so I guess there is a good positive here. Her legs are the same nice pinless ones, and I think she might have been one of the easiest ones to get moving actually out of the packaging. Standing test, thankfully very easy. My second complaint for this figure comes with her lacking accessories. She has two hands, a fist here and an open palmed one, which matches the pair that she's currently equipped with. For a Storm figure, this is a huge letdown. Storm of all people should have power effect pieces. I think that many have complained about this in the past, and we're all in agreement that display stands and figures should be a given at this point, especially considering McFarlane and Diamond Select hand them out like they're hotcakes. Storm of all people should have included something that would have acted as a flight stand. So Storm was the one figure that I was most likely to skip. I'm not fully sold on that design just yet until I see the show, because I do think that she looks cool, but she doesn't resemble what my ideal Storm is just yet. The material that was used for her cape is a huge letdown, and the lacking of accessories makes her a bottom tier figure for me. Now Bishop, on the other hand, is a different story. Here's a figure where I thought he's not what I'm wanting for a Bishop figure, so I might skip him, but he's definitely one of the better ones. Visually, he's just stunning. I think I read people say somewhere that he's got a matte finish for his skin, which is what makes him so different to the other figures here. The colors that he has are the most dynamic here, being the only figure that's using that traditional team uniform. I love the size of this figure compared to the others. You can see compared to Wolverine here, he's got like a Mr. Incredible design going on. It's amazing. He reminds me of my Action Man Adam toys. I don't know how well known that is or not. The special parts that he's included with here are this bandana piece, which acts the exact same way as Magneto's cape does. It's only been glued down on one side specifically, and then he's got this massive shoulder holster for his gun. Same deal there too. He's a great action figure overall. Articulation wise, for the final time here people, he can rotate at his head. His massive arms can rotate out, and they've got the same movements as the other figures in the series. He can actually rotate at the upper arm here and features the good double bends in his elbows. The hands feature some movements here as well. Chest rotates here too, all the way backwards and forwards, and he can successfully rotate at the hips without that scary clicking sound. His legs also feature the same standard movements as the other figures, nice pinless design, and thankfully the good double bends in his knees. He can also rotate his legs both in the thigh and the top of his boot actually, and his feet can rotate as well. Standing test, you know he succeeds easily. Accessories again, they're just fine. He's got a gun, it's the most unique inclusion, that's for sure. It's a really boring grey design that's a rubber piece as well. It's interesting at the very least. Two hands as well, both are trigger finger hands for both sides. It's funny because the right hand he currently has is just a fist, and the left hand already kind of works as a trigger hand anyway, so this feels a little odd to me. I think he, while not originally being an exciting one for me, became one of the best figures of this wave. I think that his sculpt is great, I love those massive parts that he uses, and I love his colors as well. He stands out so brightly on the display, and he contrasts really well with the other figures. Overall, I am really satisfied with this wave here, and I desire more figures from this line please. I will say that the flaws are annoying. I really do wish the accessories were better across the board. I would argue that 2 out of 6 of them have great accessories. 2 out of 6 of them have just okay ones, and the other 2 are bad. I like the builds and all, and I think I did have some concerns originally on who the characters were that were chosen for this wave, but no, ultimately, it's a really good group we've got here. I think these guys will look really great with my other figures. We are missing some key players here. I don't know how many of them they want to remake, considering a bunch of them were released under that VHS line, but I would like to see some of my favorites sometime soon. If you liked what you've seen here and you want to see more, liking and subscribing does help to support this channel in making more videos just like this. Thank you very much, I hope to see you in the next video.